stop sharing. Hello, hello, hello. When I stand, where obscure people? I wanted to stand. Colin, can I? Yeah, but my first count. Presentation is not. Okay. Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chair, Dr. Anna Baho. I don't know whether the mic is on. I want to thank you for introducing me well. And I want to welcome my fellow panelists, Professor Ndevesa and Imam Kasozi, who is on the way. Incidentally, he had gone to the main campus, but he's coming back this way. And all participants to this important debate, when the academia, we are also trying to say something on this ADF issue. As Ugandans, and of course in the region, people in the region of Great Lakes region, we are concerned. And I want to thank Nkumba University, especially CESAC, for always leading in these discussions on security without leaving them only to the state and to the operators, but we at the academia also to say something. So I was given by CESAC a topic that is Adf Islamic. How sustainable is Uganda's approach in dealing with the threat? I would say my role is very simple this morning, is to kick the ball rolling for the entire group here, but especially our panelists to take on this subject. I will do that. I will kick the ball to roll, and the panelists will pick on, and also those of you who are here physically and online will be invited to participate. Yes, it's an interesting subject to discuss. I can't. Why is it not moving? So I stop it. Okay. Sorry, I was correcting some few things with the IT. But my paper has two sides. Part A, I want to look at some theoretical questions for the debate that will help us as we debate this issue. Then I'll look at what is ADF, what is Islam, and then I'll attempt to answer this question: is ADF Islamic? It's not a simple question to answer, but I will attempt, and where I will stop, my panelists will also come in. The second part will be how sustainable is the government policy on handling ADF. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is happening. Now, some theoretical questions for the debate, which are very important for us to look at. This question of whether or not ADF is Islamic requires us to it invites us to interrogate a bigger intellectual topic of relationship between religion and terrorism. It is a big topic. It has been discussed in both the academia and even the practitioners for a long time. And depending on the context, I want to say both religion and terrorism are actually widely used, but they are also contested concepts. We don't agree on religion, that's why we have so many religions. But also the meaning of terrorism, we have not agreed on it. So they are both contestable questions and they have different meanings. And depending on how one chooses to define religion, I say religion has had both positive and negative influence over human history. For example, those who study sociology and political science, you realize that sociologists like Max Weber and many other philosophers like Karl Marx, they have written extensively on religion, including calling it an opium of the poor or the opium of society. But in general, looking at human history without referring to any specific sect, I want to say religion has been a motivating factor for both good and evil. We all belong to religions. I know well. I don't know unless some of you are not religious, but I'm religious and many of you are. But I want to say that yes, it has been a motivating factor for good and evil. You can talk about the pre-Westphalian religious wars in Europe. Since 1618 to up 1648, Europe was under war because of religious conflicts. And these were Christians, by the way, killing each other, not Muslims, killing just left and right. They killed each other up to 1648. The fundamental question then to ask here is, does religion act as a cover for political, economic, or other factors, or is it purely theological in nature? We shall need to interrogate such questions. But in relation to terrorism, we further need to ask ourselves two other related questions. One, is terrorism related to religious ideologies? And two, what are the other factors that play a part in inspiring acts of terrorism? Because I know there could be other factors. So we need also to ask, look at those other factors. Now, in this paper, I will argue that they are both religious and non-religious reasons that compel people to engage in acts of terrorism. And I think you'll agree with me on that. Therefore, the need to attend to the root causes of terrorism is very important, other than apportioning it where it belongs, who is responsible, but we also need to look at the root causes of terrorism. And to a large extent, there have been also economic, social, and justice issues, as we know very well. And as one scholar once said, that we blame religion and ignore the economic underpinnings of terrorism at our own peril. And there has been a tendency, of course, of connecting terrorism to religion, forgetting these other issues. And I want us to argue, as Ahmed Sheikh Mohammed said, that there is a mix of ignorance, poverty, oppression, repression, exclusion, and occupation that explains terrorism, apart from religion. So that's what Muhammad argues. Either we shall agree with him, I will see maybe at the end of this debate. Secondly, it is also erroneous to equate terrorism to Islam per se, because we have witnessed cases where Muslims have been targeted by fellow Muslims and non-Muslims. There has been terrorism in Iraq, in Syria, and in other countries that are Islamic, isn't it? And being attacked. So, but we can now look at the case of the day, that is ADF, through the above theoretical lens, in order to analyze whether or not the approach to ADF is a correct one or not. Ladies and gentlemen, I want first look at what is ADF. The Allied Democratic Force is actually not very much understood in this region, much as it has really existed and endured the government, not only Uganda, but governments in the region for over 20 years. By instrumentalizing Islamist, ethnic, and secessionist ideologies to recruit and forge their own alliances. ADF was formed in 1995 by a coalition of groups. Some of them were not Muslim. For example, it was formed by a group, Uganda Muslim Liberation Army, and the National Army for the Liberation of Uganda, NALU, with the reason of fighting the government of Museveni. And its leader, Jamil Mukulu, as you can see him there, was actually born not a Muslim, he was a Christian. He converted to Islam while he was studying in Saudi Arabia. The ADF decided to adopt Islam as an ideology. And we shall see it has actually adopted different ideologies. It adopted Islam as an ideology. It was born from a group of puritanical Muslims from the Tabligh Salafi sect. These members of the Islam, that sect of Islam, the Tabligh or the Salafi, they actually call themselves Muslim evangelists, the defenders of the faith. And in Uganda, the Tablighs had claimed that the Muslims were being marginalized by the government in terms of employment, in terms of socio-economic and political issues. Its roots, however, go back to 1991, when a violent group of Tablighs attempted to take over the Uganda Muslim Supreme Council. And this led to the arrest of Mukulu and some other people. So when they released Mukulu in 1994, they formed a Salafi foundation. They also fled out of Kampala and they went to Hoima in Western Uganda, to be specific, to a place called the Hoima, Buseruka, yes. They went to Buseruka, thank you, Professor. They went to Buseruka in that valley to set up camp and train. Unfortunately, they were attacked in 1995 by the army. They overran, forcing them to flee to DRC, where they linked up with NALU to form ADF as a multi-ethnic front. Actually, the other group that formed, joined them were the groups in the Western in Arua, what's called? The Bank Front, the group that was soldiers of former President Amin Dada. The Bank Front, Rescue Bank Front. Yes, they also joined this group. Yes, and so as you can see, we trace it from 1991. The first of 1994 they formed. They were defeated, or not defeated as such. They were chased from their training camps from Hoima, but they went to DRC and they joined up with these other groups. So the new alliance also included the West Nile Bank Front. Yes, that's what I was talking about. These fighters were loyal to former President Amin. They were being supported by Sudan and the Congo, or Congolese government and Sudanese government. Ladies and gentlemen, we note here that the ADF operates mainly in the mountainous areas of Rwenzori for a reason, and that's why I think they run that side, because this region affords them access to trade, the ability to blend in the community, and opportunities to tap long-standing tensions on both sides of the border. You know, that area of Kasese with the Rosrur issues, and I think ADF found this place very fertile for them. The rugged terrain also makes it difficult to track and engage them militarily by the government or the governments in the region. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you know, the leader Jamil Mukulu was captured in 2015 in Tanzania. He's now on charges of mass murder, terrorism, and crimes against humanity at the Special War Crime Division of the Uganda High Court. So ADF is under a new leader. Now, the ADF has taken on many facets before I go to the leader. The facets you can see from Salafi, Jihadi, secular nationalist, ethno-nationalist, and secessionist ideologies. All these aim at different audiences and also employed for different purposes. So anyone fighting ADF or wanting to fight, you must understand these facets of ADF. It's therefore challenging actually to develop a coherent strategy to defeat this group, because it's difficult to determine which of these identities is dominant at a given time. So sometimes you may say it is Islamic, later on they will change. Now, to this complex, we also added the fact that ADF has from time to time served as a proxy in the Great Lakes region's extended and complicated conflicts. You know, we have conflicts Uganda and Rwanda, Uganda and DRC, Uganda and Sudan. We have had all these conflicts, and ADF is so wise to take advantage of this. And indeed, they have survived by taking advantage of these conflicts. So they are under a new leader now. After the arrest of Mukulu, there is a new leadership of Musa Baluku. Now, Musa Baluku has recently forged ties with the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS. This is proved by the flags now they are holding, and some other issues that have been arrested and some are caught by MONUSCO fights. In that flag, they have a new name called Madina at Tawhid wa Mujahideen. Those who don't know Arabic, it means city of monotheism and holy warriors. We have some Muslim scholars here, they will help us later on to read that properly in Arabic. Now, of course, the documents that have been confiscated, they also prove that the ADF is trying to establish a caliphate in the region, the region of East and Central Africa. I will talk about the caliphate later, what it means. But it has recently also enforced strict Islamic law in its strongholds in DRC. Now, what is Islam? After talking about what ADF is, I'm looking for how to answer our question of the day. Islam is the second largest religion in the world after Christianity, with about 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide. Scholars trace it from the 7th century, making it the youngest of the major world religions. It started in Mecca, in modern day Saudi Arabia, during the days of Prophet Muhammad's life, peace be upon him. The word Islam means submission to the will of God. And the followers of Islam are called Muslims. They are monotheistic. In other words, they follow one God, all embracing, all powerful God. And this God is called Allah in Arabic. So, ladies and gentlemen, they have a very good book called the Quran. Is the major holy book they use. They have another book, I forget the name, Hadith. They have another one called Hadith. Thank you very much. A central idea in Islam is Jihad. And I want to mention this because it has a connection with our debate today. This is a very, very important idea in Islam, Jihad, which means struggle. You all, I think you know the struggle now in Uganda. Some percent will struggle. You have heard that, but this is not the struggle I'm talking about. Yes, but jihad is a struggle, and this term has been used negatively in mainstream culture. But for Muslims, the term is very important. It refers to internal and external efforts to defend the faith. By the way, this could also include military jihad if a just war is needed. My only question I ask here, who determines a just war? But in Islam insists that yes, there can be a military jihad. Okay? So Islam, there are 5 pillars of Islam. One is Shahad, to declare one's faith in God and belief in Muhammad. The second one, Salat, to pray 5 times a day. The third one, Zakat, to give those in need. The fourth is Saum, to fast during Ramadan. And the fifth is Hajj, to make pilgrimage to Mecca. So a good Muslim, I think, is determined by looking at these pillars. So I don't know whether the fellows in that group also respect these pillars. After Muhammad's death, Islam began to spread rapidly under a series of leaders. These leaders were called caliphs. They became successors of Muhammad, and the system of leadership where a leader was a Muslim or a Muslim ruler became to be known as a caliphate. And that's what ADF wants to create in a region, a caliphate. A system of leadership run or where a Muslim is a ruler. And during the first 4 caliphs, the Arab Muslims conquered large part of area around the Middle East, including Syria, Palestine, Iran, and Iraq. No wonder the caliphate of ISIS is actually traced around Iraq and Syria. And so they were trying to rebrand, to reproduce that old caliphate. Islam also spread through areas of Europe, Africa, and Asia. And you can see the map where Islam had covered. So it's not a simple region. It was spreading seriously. And but I want to say the caliphate system for centuries, and eventually it existed for centuries, and it spread. Actually, it controlled the area after evolving itself into an Ottoman Empire, which controlled large regions in the Middle East from about 1517 to until 1917, when the World War I ended the Ottoman Empire or the region. So it ended, and I think that's what ISIS and others are trying to reconstruct. So after looking at those 2, ADF and Islam, I want to attempt to answer the question of the day. Is ADF Islamic? I say it's not a simple question to answer, but we have noted already that ADF has taken on many faces since its establishment. So one can say it can pass as a multi-ideological organization. And we have heard and seen many multi-ideological organizations. Why terrorism is not an Islamic phenomenon, by definition, we should also not forget or ignore the fact that the major terrorist acts in recent years, including those of ADF, have been perpetrated in the name of Islam. That's a fact. They have been carried out in the name of Islam, but this does not mean that they are supported by Islam. However, of course, as academics, we may be hesitant to link these acts with the bona fide teaching of this great and important religion, which is very peaceful. But we may say, what is the reaction of the region when these acts are carried out in the name of Islam. Maybe the time we need now what we call Protestant Islam, who are going to teach and change, okay, some of these bad issues. So we may therefore view them as perversion of a religion that is essentially peace-loving and tolerant. Ladies and gentlemen, there are non-Islamic etiologies of terrorism, which include, for example, political causes. We have heard and read about the Israel-Arab conflict, and today we are witnessing the Russia-Ukraine conflict. These are political. There's no religion in those conflicts. And many other political conflicts I've seen. There are cultural causes, okay? But one can say there is some terrorism taking place in Ukraine and everywhere. There's terrorism taking place in Israel-Arab conflict. And there's not religion there, but these are political issues. Cultural causes, rebellion against Western cultural colonialism. The Mau Mau of this world, they already fought, they were all fighting using terrorism. You read about, or we know apartheid in South Africa. These are all cultural issues, not Islam or not religion. But there are also social causes, groups that are fighting against alienation. LRA, they claim they were being alienated, they were fighting to protect some group, their existence, poverty. These can all be important causes, okay, of terrorism that are non-Islamic. Otherwise, I'm saying an interpretation which places the blame for terrorism on religious traits may run the risk of being branded a bigoted and Islamophobic reasoning. We have to be careful with that. So, my part B is simple. I was asked to look at whether the government approach is an effective government approach for handling ADF. My take is that there are so many approaches, I think, that the government of Uganda is deploying. We may not be privy to some of them. I personally may not be privy to other approaches, but the most pronounced one we know today is the military approach. The military approach has been used against ADF, even within Uganda. The military has attacked the suspected ADF people militarily. And just recently we had a problem in this country, and the military went full throttle following them. Yeah, it's a good approach. They have even gone to DRC to fight ADF militarily. I'm saying it's a good approach because it can help us to have good, quick, what we call, to register quick wins, and also dispersing the ADF. And the dispersing does not mean that you have defeated. They can disperse, they will regroup. As I've said, they have had many chances of regrouping and using different facets. So it is a good approach, the approach Uganda is using, but I'm saying it's not enough. ADF's ability to integrate, for example, into the region, and as I said, to understand and also tap local grievances, and also insert itself into the larger Great Lakes conflicts, has helped it to survive. And I'm saying it can continue surviving because they have used these approaches and to survive for 20 years. Likewise, the ADF skill in combining multi-ideologies to mobilize and recruit fighters has been a major factor in its resistance and resilience. So, and all these cannot be defeated by the military option, that you may require other options. For example, changing of the mind, mindset change, but also knowing the origin of ADF is Uganda, and they have issues that they have actually outlined. Maybe there could also be other ways that they could confront using other means in terms of diplomacy, in terms of negotiations, in terms of reaching out to these people, on top of the military option, which is very important, but not enough alone. So I'm saying efforts to make sense of this group and develop effective counter strategies should take into account its major phases and also elements rather than the other elements are important rather than using a singular template. So we are trying to understand and unlock these complex features, and this will require sustained intelligence-led security operations, not only militarily, but intelligence, to me, I think should be deployed to understand the operations, to understand all what I've just mentioned here, the forces, the methodologies they are using, and then intelligence can actually maybe root out this problem, because for them they'll combine both soft and hard options. So I want to thank you, Chairperson and members, and my presentation stops here. I'll wait for other questions. Thank you.
Solomon. Thank you, Professor Solomon, for that presentation. You have used the right time. Before I invite the first panelist, Professor Mwambusia, I want to recognize the presence of Ambassador Kisure. I also want to recognize the persons in charge of rule of law in this country. I see a number of police officers on board, and I hope this discussion will indeed be of value to you. Those online and those physically present, we are now going to listen to the first discussant, and that is Professor Mwambusia Ndebesa. Professor Mwambusia Ndebesa is from Makerere University in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, and he's known for willingly sharing knowledge in history and political science and contemporary political social problems solutions. Join me in receiving Professor Mwambusia. Professor, you have the floor.
Is this necessary? I don't know.
For the, yeah, for the
purposes of the other people. Okay. No, I can stand except now handling this one. No, I will handle it, don't mind. I beg your pardon? You need it to connect with the other people. Thank you, Madam Moderator. And our presenter for today, Professor Solomon Asimwe. And I would like to thank Professor Asimwe for inviting me to share this topic with you. He's the one who selected me, so in case I don't meet your expectations, you know whom to blame. In case I meet your expectations, the thankfulness goes to me. Protocol, I am happy to meet colleagues here and those who are students of this important topic of security studies. I am missing Haji Kasozi, Imam Kasozi. He's on the way, he's coming. Huh? No, we can't hold on because there are those other people who will not understand us. Otherwise, those of us would understand. I will excuse Professor Asimwe here for being sectarian without knowing it. He's innocent. but he decided to have discussants who can reflect sectarianism here. I know he didn't know that Imam Kasozi is my OB Chitunga High School. I know Asime know that Imam Kasozi and myself are all from Ntungamo. So he chose discussants with two characteristics from the same district and from the same former school. That notwithstanding, let me go back to the topic for today. Professor Asime, I think, has given us that good background. My comments will come a long way with the comments I was making notes here. Actually, I took the advantage for having come early and made a few notes, and they seem to be fitting into what he was presenting. He gave us a theoretical framework, which was good for an academic paper like this one. And my comments maybe, I hope they will add something, they will add value to his presentation as he refines his presentation for, I hope, he thinks of publishing it or writing it into a bigger publication. He ably did how sustainable is government. He defined what is Islam, and he gave us a theoretical framework of a big picture and the history of the character of the changing changing character of Adf. And I think he gave us that broader picture that we are going to use to understand this phenomenon of Adf in the region. However, I have some questions that I will be raising from time to time. And for example, he did not define for us terrorism, which used all the time. So what is this terrorism? I didn't hear him clearly defining terrorism. And he also located the question of, well, terrorism could be this generally a group or groups using, or an individual even, using violence for other political ends, but using violence against non-combatants. Normally they use, the terrorists use non-combatants, but to draw the attention of those in authority to their cause. I can welcome my OB, Imam Kasozi there, on behalf of the organizer. So, and then he went ahead to give us the kind of the history of this challenge of Islam and Adf beginning in 1991. I think he would have done better to give us this challenge of the Islam question, or the Islamic question, or the Islamist question in Uganda. It does not start in 1991. It goes far, far back since colonialism, or even since there were interreligious wars in Uganda in 1890s. It goes far back to the historical injustice of Muslims who were left behind, at least in education, by the colonial state. It goes so far to look at how Idi Amin tried to correct this imbalance by making it in reverse and also creating imbalance with other religions. It goes back to the time when UNLF, I think he was not yet born, he was young. You ask us, UNLF, and how UNLF defined Muslim or Islam as the enemy because they were against Idi Amin. and how it feeds now into the 1991. I think he needs to go back and look at that. So it is earlier than 1991. The Islam question, the Islamic question, or the whole issue of marginalization and historical marginalization, I think it is an issue. And finally, I am going to address it when I pass through my notes. He did not problematize. You academics here, you know the question of is problematizing. He did not problematize the solutions of the Uganda government towards the question of ADF. He didn't problematize it. He took it for granted that the Uganda government is doing something positive towards solving this problem. I will come to that when I go to my notes, which I am going to briefly now. The broader context of the debate, I associate myself with the presenter. I associate myself with the presenter regarding giving a broader context, but I might add on now. Like all conflicts, and violent conflicts at that, because not all conflicts are violent, but some are violent, like ADF, its source or causes, there are some authors I did not note them down. They were summarized in this mantra. Let's call it a mantra. These mantras help us to remember. They summarized them into greed, creed, and need. That these conflicts, whether violent or non-violent, are normally caused by what can be summarized under greed, and then under creed, and then under need. By creed meaning that, by greed meaning that they are those who are seeking material gains, and they are greedy for material gains, which is associated with power. So they are greedy for material gains and power. And the power can be social power, religious power, political power. That's greed. I'm summarizing. Then there is creed. That is ideologies or doctrines or values. I think those who are following what is going on, the statements going on in Ukraine, they are talking about, especially the Western powers, EU, I hear them saying that we are going to defend our country, and we are determined to defend our people and our lives, and we are going to defend our values. So there is a question of creed, whether it is the doctrines, or it is values, or it is ideologies. Then there is need. There are those who are oppressed, marginalized, discriminated, and they need to resolve the questions, to resolve their status as marginalized, as oppressed, as left behind. You want to give me another? Oh, handling all of them. I need a cup of tea then. So there are those 3 layers. Now we have to look at those layers. And these layers can overlap in one organization, or in one outfit, or in one struggle. The creed, the need, and the greed. I hope we are together to help us. This mantra helps us to understand these sources of conflicts or causes of conflicts. So now let me go to violence and terrorism. Now, there are very many methods used in violence. It's not always terrorism. That's why I was challenging the presenter to define as terrorism. Because violent means are not necessarily always terroristic. And actually ADF has not always used terror. This using killing to alarm or maiming to alarm in order to draw attention of authorities to your cause. No, at times they have not used that method. They have used other methods of violence. Because at times they can use mass murders, kidnappings, arson, etc. Now, let me look at the religious-based terrorism or mass murders or using violence. Yes, he has rightly pointed out that actually using religion as a mobilization tool for fighting either for a just cause, that's the need, or for creed, or for greed, is not limited to Islam. If we use Christians, actually, the Christian era, the first 3 decades, the first 3 centuries, up to 300 before the Roman Empire, Constantine, made Christianity the Roman Empire, the state religion. That is when Christians were being persecuted. After that, the persecuted became persecutors. The Christians persecuted people in the Western world, especially in Europe. The state persecuted those who were not Christians. It persecuted very many. Later, the Catholic Church, especially the Protestant Church later, through inquisitions and crusade, they also exercised terror. So you can see the issue of religion and terrorism or murders or violence is not limited to Islam. Today, we are conversant with what is going on in Myanmar. In the other former, what was it, Burma? Yeah, those are Buddhists. Those are Buddhists, they are not Muslims. And I think the same is happening, is it in Central African Republic? In Central African Republic, where the Christians are doing the other one. Even in USA, they are Christians, the Christian right, which is terrorizing, actually, they are using terrorism. So any creed can be used against people through violence. But besides, there are those who associate terrorism with religion. But what about secular organizations, which he did point out, but I'm going to add on. You have heard of Maoists. They are Maoists in Nepal, Maoists in India, and other places. These are secular. There are even Christian left, not Christian left, the leftists in USA who are almost competing with the rightists in the USA. These are secular. You've heard of killings in Cambodia, in whatever, who were Marxists. So Marxists are secularists. They also used terror. The Road Resistance Army, well, it is religious. I don't know whether it was even religious, or they were just putting on the religious garb. But they were also like traditionalists or something like that. They were also using terror. So I wanted us to look at that one, not only saying terrorism is limited to Christians or even Muslims, but all can turn out to be that. I hope we are together there. But he pointed out that I was just adding on. Now, history of ADF, Allied Democratic Forces. As I had pointed out earlier, if we were to look at the sources, maybe not the causes, sometimes the two are not the same. The sources of a conflict are not necessarily the causes of conflicts. If we had to look at the root sources, the sources of this conflict, it is embedded in the Islam question in Uganda and the colonial rule and later subsequent independence governments. So we cannot go into the details. That one can constitute its own paper of how there was a historical injustice against the Muslims by the colonial state and post-colonial states. And when Idi Amin came into power, he discriminated in reverse. And that also caused the Christians to look at Muslims as a problem. And we have to understand these complexities in order to explain the emergence of outfits like the ADF. ADF emerged, but was it due to doctrinal differences? Maybe, maybe not. Even global terrorism, I don't think that is the one of Islam. But before that, let me even explain some concept which he didn't explain. He can now adopt it and see how to work on it. I think the question here, I would rephrase it. Is ADF Islamic? Maybe it should have been, is it Islamist? The two are different. Islamic and Islamist. Is ADF Islamic or Islamist? Islamic has something basically to do with the doctrinal issues, value issues, competition, cultural issues, but when it becomes political, the communists use the term is now Islamist. That ADF is now mainly Islamist, but there are other layers of Islamism. It seems to be having both. But even globally, Islamism is not basically doctrinal. The doctrines of Islam or Christianity actually are peace and love. When you go to the sacred books, they are talking about peace and love, not the Old Testament. The Old Testament, especially the book of Joshua, is actually genocidal. That one was promoting genocide. But you see, there is likely to be a difference between religion is said to be a system of beliefs and practices. I have had that simple definition of religion. Now, when it comes to practices, they may not rhyme very well with the belief. It becomes a tradition now, and there are those who put on the garb of a belief in order to promote a material greed or need. So ADF has been evolving all the time when you look at how it started. Incidentally, it started here, mainly here in Kampala, and the rivalry was between actually Muslim factions. And it was over ownership of mosques in Kampala. It was material. Although the Tablighs had a different version of Islam, but basically it was competition over properties. And then when the state came in, I'm going to come back to that one, there is the way it distorted the whole thing, and it made ADF continue to behave the way it behaves. So it has been evolving. If I can use the other mantra, it has layers of greed, it has layers of greed, it has layers of need. The same ADF. Although it started in Kampala, went to DRC, Congo, now it is becoming a regional because some of the recruits have just been reading from Tanzania, others have come from Kenya, others are linked to Mozambique. It is now becoming wider. It is even changing from being a typical Islamist to Islamic if it joins the ISIS in terms of ideological creed, but it is also evolving into an organized crime group in some respects, just plundering, just getting gold and coltan and doing all those things. So it has been evolving. So I want to analyze the ADF as an Islamist outfit, not necessarily Islamic. Therefore, I could touch on the topic. Is it Islamic? Are we looking at ADF as Islamic or as Islamist? And which of the layers is dominant within ADF? But you could talk about ADF today, but now I'm talking as a historian. these layers have been shifting. When it started in Kampala, and as he has told you, even it is allied democratic forces. It is an ally of many others. You know NARU, which he talked about, National Army for the Liberation of Uganda, started by Bazira. Yes, Amon Bazira, a Christian who was operating in Rwenzori. Do you see that angle of historical injustices, of marginalizing the Bakonzo, coming back and out haunt us through ADF? That element, sometimes the government doesn't look at it. I am going to address that one at the end and show how government needs to do better than what it is doing. Because there is that element of the Kasese people. So at what stage we have to look at the evolution, and at what stage it put on the garb of religion. So as I said before, it is both Islamic and Islamist, depending on which layer you are looking at and at which point. So some of the issues I'm going to discuss them when I am now discussing the strategies for sustainable strategies. He calls them approaches or strategies to overcome the challenge of violence of this challenge. Now, how it evolved, partly because of NRM, I'm not saying completely, because of NRM. And NRM has been making this mistake, and anybody who talks about the policymakers of NRM can take this message from me. How NRM partly led to ADF. As I told you, it was rivalry over properties and things like that, a little bit of differences in doctrines and whatever, you know, because Islam has got different sects. Actually, far from terrorism of Islam targeting Christians, the majority of people have died under terrorist attacks, not necessarily this ADF, but globally are actually fellow Muslims. So it does not necessarily attack Christians in the Middle East, as he has pointed out. You know, the Sunni versus the Shiites and other groups in Uganda, we have all of them. Hey, what is happening? Okay. So there is a challenge, but it is disturbing me. Huh? I was saying how NRM came in, or NRM government came in, and any government definitely when there is insecurity or there is public disorder, he's here, he could tell you, it has a legitimate right to intervene. Any government, once its name, must intervene when there is public disorder. And therefore, NRM intervened when there was that fight in this mosque. By the way, it was not the Gaddafi one, the old Kampala. It was the other one on Namirembe. Some of us were old enough and here in Kampala, where even people used swords. It has been using different methods, by the way. Not only this terrorism as bombing, there they were using knives. At first, actually, they were using fists. They were fisting each other. On old Kampala, on William Street. Then they went to swords. Then they held guns. Now they are holding bombs. But I am saying when the government intervened, which should have happened. But when the NRM government intervenes, it tends to take sides. And that creates a problem. It tends to take sides. And when there is this saying that the enemy of your enemy is your enemy or something like that. Yeah? When it takes sides, these factions which were already there, they now took sides and again targeted the government because they thought that government was marginalizing them. And it has continued to do it up to now. How does it do it? I'm problematizing Professor Simwe. I'm problematizing the strategies of the government. When the government comes in, not only for ADF, but even other conflicts, and the government, as I said, should always intervene. when there is public disorder. It normally recruits, you find two factions fighting each other. Then when they come in, they ally with one faction. How do they do it? They recruit some members of that faction into the army or security forces, into intelligence, into state house, into cadreship. And the other people now say, oh, government is shielding our enemies in that case, so we shall target them together with government that is shielding them. And it has been doing that not only on the ADF. Let's use the obvious one, the Kasese conflict. You see, the Kasese conflict between the Bakonzo and the Bamba. Do you follow that one? The Obudingia versus the one of Genzuru is what? Obusinga. Yes. When the Kasese people didn't vote NRM, especially with Honorable Chiza, NRM jumped on not Obusinga, on the Bamba, said you also create your own kingdom. So now the conflict went beyond Bamba and Bakonzo to the NRM. Now the Bakonzo said, oh, you government, you are now our enemy. Now this is the Mombere thing. That's how it began. Then all of a sudden, when there was a conflict, which I'm not saying NRM created it, there was a conflict between Bakonzo and Basongora. NRM jumped and supported the Basongora. Now the Kasese people said, oh, NRM is supporting our rivals here. Now it is also our enemy. I'm just giving you examples how it creates those challenges. Even here, the Buganda question, there was a rivalry, a conflict between the Buganda kingdom and the Banyara, which I'm not saying was created by NRM, but immediately NRM jumped and supported the Banyara, and that leads to a conflict. And it has been doing that. So when you do that, it nearly did it to the Munjoro when it supported another group that emerged along the lake and was also demanding to be independent. NRM was almost jumping on them. Now, the moment the government supports one of the rival factions, the other faction, which is not supported, looks at the government as enemy. And have you read James Scott, The Weapon of the Weak? You better read it. The Weapon of the Weak. The weak, we always use other methods other than the conventional ones, because under conventional ones, they can't win. So they resort to terrorism. Those are the weapons of the weak. The weak have to devise means also. Yeah, in my language, in Ankola, they say, you see, when you are few and you are confronting a bigger enemy, what you do, you run in the banana plantation, the sanja, and the enemy will see you are also many, they will run away. Those are the weapons of the weak. So if the weak perceive government to be supporting their enemy, this happens even globally. When the West supports one of the groups in the Middle East, the other one increases its terrorism. You get what I mean? When the West supports Israel, then the Hezbollah, Hamas, and whatever they say now, since for us, even Israel is stronger than us. The West is stronger than us. So what do? We hit their buildings. Because those are the weapons of the weak. So that is how NRM complicated a situation. I'm not saying they originated it, but they complicated it by supporting one group against the other. In my opinion, what the government should do when it intervenes, get those people, if need be, give them scholarships, give children the scholarships, give them businesses, give them whatever. But the moment you put them in intelligence, and people know that the intelligence, I mean the other faction which remained or which quarreled with you, once it knows that some of its enemies are within intelligence, so you become a target as a government, plus the other people also become a target. Like this, I suspect, I'm not very sure, because he said some of the information, we are not privy to information. These Muslims who were assassinated, that was not terrorism, by the way. That was assassination. Because terrorism, you don't target the individuals that you know. You just do some harm in order to draw attention to yourself. I think they were assassinated. I suspect that the other group who assassinated them thought that they were recruited by government, and therefore they are their enemies. I would say that the government desists from recruiting those people into its outfit, into ideologies of the movement. That creates more anger to the other people. You know, anger can be raised, and we are not saying necessarily anger is bad. There is transformative anger and negative anger. If you are angry against privileges, against oppression, against exploitation, in a manner that is not so violent, then that anger is justified. But you can create different angers and whatever. So when you are engaging, Professor Simwe did say that government should engage politically, which I also support. But how do you engage? The nature of engagement is very critical. If you engage supporting one faction against the other, you know the results. You actually escalate rather than de-escalate. The moment the other group faction knows that behind your engagement, at times the government actually sends the other people whom they are against. Say, you go and contact us, those people. You think they will accept them? They will not accept them. Actually, it will actually disturb them more. That the people they disagreed with are the ones you are using, and it will escalate instead of de-escalating. You get what I mean? So the political engagement, which should be done sensitively. The colonialists, by the way, used to be smart. Whenever there was such a thing, like there was the Nyanjire rebellion in Bunyoro, at the initial period, there was also the Muhumuza Nyabinji rebellion in Kigezi. They would set up a commission of inquiry. Supposing you set up a commission of inquiry headed by Professor Sim, he will be perceived as neutral even by the other group. Then he comes up with a less biased report. Then you use that report to address the problem. In other words, where is the role of intellectuals in resolving the problem? Like you. The role of intellectuals is very critical, not just the politicians, because politicians always are for power. They want to extract somebody there who will be their cadre, who will be their political mobilizer. And the other people who are opposed to them and you will not listen to you. You get what I mean by problematizing this intervention by government? Yeah? So we have to do that one. But again, we have to involve the general population. In my opinion, security operations should be a preserve of the security forces like him and the rest. That is operational issues. But causes, sources of conflicts, we should all be involved. But our voices are never listened to. They are never. It should not be only the military question. The issue of violence, the issue of insecurity is not exclusively a military question. And to be solved by the technical military people, it needs a civil and civilian intervention. We need to have civic intervention in security matters. And therefore, the national population, the general population, apart from intellectuals I pointed out, should be brought in. Other civil society organizations, the church, the mosque, the NGOs, the cultural associations, they should be involved. Not necessarily operational issues. Operational issues could be the preserve of the military, but the question of addressing the fundamental sources of conflict should involve all of us. There is nobody with a monopoly of knowledge, of understanding Uganda. There is no correct line. You remember the system of the correct line? Yeah. There is nobody who is, how do you know somebody is not patriotic? They select people that these are patriotic. Who is patriotic? Who is patriotic and who is not patriotic? Who decides who is patriotic? Some of those people singing patriotism are the ones grabbing land. Isn't it? They are grabbing land, they are grabbing tenders, they are grabbing jobs, they are grabbing scholarships, they are grabbing everything, and then you say those are the patriotic and they sing patriotism. The point I'm making here, however, is that all of us should be involved in our own capacities to resolve the fundamental questions, and we leave the operational issues to the technical military people. That's how I'm problematizing these options of resolving the issue. Finally, I would like to comment on understanding the question. I will go back to my mantra of need, creed, and greed. We have to understand the problem from those three angles and look at the different layers and see which layer is most prominent and which one is less prominent, which one is dominant, which one is not dominant. The creed, the need, and the greed. And therefore, you tackle it from that angle. If there are those who are greedy, you can see how to address them. If you sit, there is creed, yeah, there is creed now. It is joining the ISIS, that is a creed question. But most of these Ugandans do not know the doctrines, let me tell you. Even the difference between Anglicans and Christians, I normally ask my students and other people and say, what is the difference between Anglicans and the Catholics doctrinally? Not just that one makes this sign and another one doesn't make it. That is the surface things in terms of doctrines. So I don't think Ugandans are like those people in the Middle East who are fighting for against cultural erosion, values erosion as such. These ones, it is mainly greed and need. So which layer is most important, and how can the government now intervene to address that layer? Looking at historical injustices, it could be perceptions also, and addressing the perceptions also, but as I finish, ladies and gentlemen, but the government must be seen to be neutral. The moment government is seen to be siding with one of the groups that are rivaling, you will not solve that problem, because that will actually escalate it rather than de-escalating it. Ladies and gentlemen, let me stop here and hear the views of the rest as we continue this discussion. But once again, I want to thank Nkumba University for taking this initiative so that we discuss these ones. Instead of going to the bush, we go to the boardrooms and discuss these issues. We are tired of bloodshed. Thank you very much. I don't know. I hope we are situated. Yes, we are.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Mwambusia. I am confident that everyone in the room is feeling it now. Is it getting cold or hotter? Or maybe to me. Okay, colleagues, on the program, we should be going for a break, but let's hold it a bit longer. Let's give an opportunity to Imam Kasozi, who is with us. And Imam Kasozi, before you came in, I just want you to be in the know of what Professor Solomon spoke about. Professor Solomon asked us to rethink what we have traditionally held as our beliefs about religion and politics, and how the two intertwine to contribute to either security and or insecurity. And on the question of ADF as, now I call it what? Islamic, Islamist. That it has taken Islam as an ideology, which makes it a bit hard to fight because it is not a secular ideology and it is based on claims of marginalization, which Professor Mwambusia has also hinted on. Professor Solomon also made mention of resource terrorism, where fighting groups take advantage of regions with resources and look out for resource proceeds in order for them to fight and work with other criminal groups. He also made mention of what the ADF consider as central to the struggle, and that is jihad through martyrdom in the form of defending faith. And on the issue of the preparedness of the government in responding to the ADF and other groups, Professor Solomon made mention of the multiple strategies that have been taken, including military and intelligence-led strategies, but also made mention of the need to move away from these traditional forms of security and look at other forms in terms of addressing what actually contributes to the rise of terror and terrorism. So colleagues and those who are following us online, I want to take the opportunity now to invite Imam Kasozi, and I need not mention what Professor has mentioned. But before I forget, Professor Mwambusia told us that you and him are brothers from the same school, historically, and also from the same region, district. So we want to see how related indeed you are when it comes to the academic circles. You're most welcome.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah sallallahu alaihi wasallam wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a bi ihsan ila yawmiddin. First of all, I apologize. There is an extra message they sent to me. I did not read it, so I ended up in Entebbe. And I was waiting to pick me into the say, oh, you hope you went, did you go to Entebbe? And indeed I was in Entebbe. So I had to drive fast to get in time. I have not listened in detail what Professor Sim has stated, but in view of what I heard Mr. say, it will give me a clue and the summary we have been given. For starters, my name is Imam Kasozi. Many other people ask me, what is your name? And I tell them, my name is Imam. Okay, my name is Imam. I also do a job of Imam on a voluntary basis. So when you want to call me an Imam of the mosque, you can call me Imam Kasozi. But when I was born 63 years ago, my father named me Imam. I grew to become Imam. Unfortunately, he did not see me become Imam, but at least my mother saw me. I want to recognize the presence of one of my friends, Dr. Chisuri, and my teacher. Every Thursday he teaches me on Zoom, in trying to understand the Islamic sciences, especially the Sharia as it is used. If you want to know me more, what is my job? My training, I am a demographer by training. Started as a sociologist and then ended as a demographer by training. My job, I am a commercial farmer, specializing in growing fruits, particularly pineapples. Now I am going to avocado, purples, and jackfruit, because jackfruit and avocado are the new areas where people see the future in terms of those who want money. I also teach part-time at the university, and people make it prominent, but that is I teach because teaching is a hobby to me. The other thing is that, am I an academic like them? No. No, because I chose not to become an academic, much as I teach at a higher institution of learning. That's why maybe I don't write, I don't whatever, but I follow and read. As he has pointed out, Mwembesa is not just my hobby, but at a given time we are both leaders of the old students of Kitunga High School, people call it Montoya today because that's the new name, but for us, we know it as Kitunga High School. We went there at different times, but closer. I think I found him either leaving. Yes. So, yes. Do we come from the same district? I think we were born in the same district, but we no longer come from the same district because I have migrated back at where I came from. Yes, where my parents came from, that's where I am now. So if you are tracing me, you may trace me in Mukono than tracing me in Rashamaire and Rinsinga where I was born. I still have attachment because I went through Kemshengo Primary School, Kitunga High School. Even recently, I was on both schools giving them water. I am sinking boreholes for them, but motorized boreholes, not the one pumped by hand. Both schools, Kitunga and Kemshengo. Recently, I was there just last Thursday. Ladies and gentlemen, some people probably, I don't know, because I did not hear people introduce themselves. Sometimes when I want to tackle this subject, there are some people I want to be present. But fortunately, since we are on Zoom and we are live on some TV have put us, we are live on some TV, we are live on social media, these people may be watching, and I want them to watch, especially when we are tackling the issue of ADF in view of some of the views presented here. My question when I received this, I asked myself, because they said terrorism and Islam. I don't know how these two are related, because these are two different things altogether. One is peace, one is a dangerous scenario. And me as a student of history, I remember I studied the reign of terror in France, longer before even Islam came to this country. The reign of terror that was in France was there before Islam came here. Actually, about 30 years earlier. Number two, the question that was asked, is ADF Islamic? He has tried to differentiate Islamic from Islamists, and then finally you end up the same thing. When you remove I and C, what do you remain with? Islam. When you remove Islamist, then you remove also I, S, and T. What do you remain with? So people disguise. They are talking about Islam and Muslims, but they are trying to disguise it. And they want to appear as if they are positive. Because, you know, we are in an era of a very, very different scenario because of COVID. It is abnormal. But in order to remain positive, we call it new normal. You want somebody to swallow quinine, you coat it with sugar so that it appears as if it is sweet, whatever you leave it with. So I asked myself, then he said, sustainable, how sustainable is Uganda's approach in dealing with the threat? I have about 5 questions to ask. Number one, what is Islamic about ADF? What is really Islamic about ADF? Just because at a given time, the leader was Jamil Mukuru, or Musa Baluku, as they are saying today. What about the others that are not Muslim and are in this outfit? Okay. Number two, what makes people think that ADF is Islamic? You are here. Assuming, I don't know whoever designed this question. What makes you think that ADF is Islamic? Okay. Number 3, we were talking about a threat. Which threat? Which threat now? Islam, terrorism, or ADF? Because all the 3, in some circles, all of them are threats. There are people who look at Islam and they are threatened. If you read this book, I don't know how many of you have read this book. If you read this book, Islam, Christian Missions, and the Colonial Administration in East Africa by Professor Sugairi, you will get very interesting things. And what did he do here? He did not write. He only went into the archives and picked documents that were written by Ugandans, by whatever, and just put them here. They are very, very, very interesting, and you can trace some of the issues that maybe led to ADF, for those who think it is Islamic, to be in existence. Next, the last question. What hasn't the other rebel outfits been? Why are the other rebel, why are they not being considered religious? Okay, despite the fact that their names, okay, were very clear. They are quite clear. For example, road resistance. The word road used in the Christian context, in most cases, it has something to do with religion. That's why even the bishops are called Lord bishops. Okay? For us in Islam, Lord is only one. Rabb. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rabb is the Lord. The rest are not. Whether it's the Lord from England, according to what they call them, whatever, if you are knighted and you become a Lord, no. For us in Islam, we don't look at it that way. Sometimes we find it very hard to address people whose titles are Lord. Lord Mayor, Lord to Chief Justice, to whom? That is for us is an exclusive usage. It is exclusive usage is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rabbul Alameen, the Lord of the worlds. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those questions emerged. Then before I go to the little thing I want to say about this, I want to make a little reaction to what I have heard. Okay? Ndebesa did justice to this. He helped us to give us, I think people talk about the originality, but many people don't ask themselves. The source of information most people use, who are the originators? And why do they give it in that way? If you ask him, the professor of history, my OB, he will tell you, if you look at the formation of Uganda and how Mbemba Musota was captured, maybe killed or captured, and Musota means the snake. And you go to the formation of the Hausa states, the story about the Kobiri also, there was also a snake preventing people from drawing water. It was also killed. Is it a coincidence? In history, he will tell you, those who win, okay, will write the story according to their perception. Those of you have read, I have seen somebody you have signed as UPDF. UPDF is an offshoot of NRA. Those of you who are in the bush, if you read about the NRA war, we have now about 5 writings. There are some documents by Besiji. They were serialized in the Monitor newspaper. Okay? We have a book by President Museveni. Even the edited version, whatever you want. Yeah, a book, Museveni, showing the mustard seed. We have a book by Captain Major, the retired Kazola John, betrayed by my leader. We have a book by the late General Kutesa. Okay? Kutesa is saying how I saw it. Then we have a book by General, this one man from, who beat a police officer, Charlie Gonza. He also has, when you read all of them, they have different views about the war, but they were fighting the same war. What is the difference? Everybody reports what he saw in the area where he fought from, and the rumors he heard from the others. Some are rumors, others are facts. Then, so that is a bigger question we need to look at. Then creed, need and greed. Those ones are used by very many people. The reason why people use creed, for example, because creed has something to do with the religion. This religion may be what you call traditional. So that, or etc. Etiologies has put it. Why people want to use religion or ethnicity? Those according to sociologists, religion which you call well, faith, whatever you want to call it, and ethnicity are the two primary sources of pure security that people can rely upon. He's my tribesman. I get comfortable with him. He is my religious mate. I get comfortable with him. Even when he's an enemy, you can reveal what you think because you think they will provide you. So when we have problems, we easily rush to these two institutions so that they give us cover. That's what I know as a student of sociology. So now, whether they organized the crime, whether whatever, and I think what triggered off these discussions is because of the recent incursions, I think, in the Congo. People said, hey, let us see. In order to make them relevant, they had to find a solution, something to use. And ADF, when you bring it, it becomes a very beautiful suit to dress into, and you go to Congo and cover up, do whatever you want. Even some of the issues he's mentioning, like organized crime and then routing. Did you use routing, or there's another one we use in history, plundering. We used, I think, plundering. You did. I had something like that. So when people can use this, and Congo has accused Uganda of plundering when Uganda had gone to put peace in Congo before. The case goes on. Recently, people said, from 10 billion to 300 million, I think there was a joke. But still, even if it was 1 shilling, by the way, that you plundered it, it remains plundering, depending on where you are standing from. Then he said, Islamist, not Islamic. This is a very interesting thing. Because what is Islamic? People they call Islamists are people who sometimes they're called fundamentalists because of putting in practice some Islamic practices. Look at me, look at Kisuri, look at whoever, these ones from, I think, Somalia, these ones. When I look at them, at a given time, they have also, some people call them, even me, I have been called an Islamist. But when they call me an Islamic fundamentalist, I accept reason because I put the fundamentals of Islam in practice. I will go for prayers. Ramadan is coming, I will fast. I pay zakah. I have gone for Hajj and I have said, Ashhadu la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah. Those are fundamentals of Islam. So when you call me a fundamentalist, basing on that, because I am religious in the mosque, or I have grown a beard. Some of you have your beards, but mine is I am growing it because of Islamic purposes. Islam, it is good to have it. It is sunnah. So I try to do it that way. But if I find somebody without it, do I persecute him? No. Okay. So then in Uganda, we do not have Islamic sects. In Uganda, what is there is not even conflict among the Muslims. It is just disparity of who is the leader of the Muslim community. Therefore, it is wrong. So all Muslims in Uganda, apart from the Indians that have come in, including these Somalis who are here, from all of us, we are of the same school of thought called the Shafi school of thought. Mazhibu Ash-Shafi. That's what we follow. We have other madhahib of Ahmad bin Hanbal, of Malik, and others. But all of us move with this one, and we are contented with it. That does not mean that we don't listen to the others. We look at them. So sects in Uganda, some of the people you want to call sects, maybe, according to Islam again, we don't look at them as Muslims. They are Ahmadiyya. Why? Because they said they have a new prophet. And according to the Quran, prophethood ended with Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, so the others, whether these groups, whether you call it Salafi, whether you call it Tablighi, whether you call it all the people, whether whatever, all of them, when you go into the real practices, we do the same. with just minor differences. And the problem in Uganda has been, is really disparity. Why I call it disparity, to who is our leader. If you ask the Muslims in this house, you will have different leaders. One will be under the Amir, or Amir al-Ummah, or Amir al-Dawla. Another one will be under Mufti, another one will be under Supreme Mufti. But all these profess the same thing. It is like when we are talking Christians, when we talk about Christians in Uganda, it is just the difference between Catholicism, Protestantism, then this Namona group, okay, is minor. That's why sometimes you will see them when they are carrying the cross, all of them come together. And then they go under UJCC, Uganda Joint Christian Council. But after the council, they go back and say, for us, we are Catholics. Even among the Catholics, those of you who are Catholic, you know, people in Rubaga are different from people in Nzambi. Some are white fathers, others are Nibiru fathers, others are Verona fathers, others. But when we look, very few people go deep to analyze that one. So even if, but because the Muslim issue has become prominent and there is a historical injustice over it and the fear of this emanating from the time of colonialism, that's why people see us in a different perspective. Then it's a lot of intellectuals. It's unfortunate. We have remained intellectuals while reading the books. But in terms of influencing public opinion, we are threatened, and therefore the majority of the civil society on the intellectual aspect or perspective is just sleeping. Why? Fear of our positions, or fear of promotion, or fear of the next meal. So what happened is, therefore, you choose. Me who studied at Makerere during the peak of real political arguments, and knew Mamdan. When I look at Mamdan's writings today, and the Mamdan that was in Makerere between 82 and 85 when I was a student there, completely two different people. My own professor, Professor Kabwejere, he taught me for 3 years. First year, he taught me anthropology, social anthropology. Second year, social structure of East Africa. Third year, social theoretical, the theories of sociological theory. He taught me all those. And he's the person I admired. He used to tell us African leaders commit the same mistakes. And one of the criteria he used that they stay longer in power. He came up to support a person who has stayed long in power, and I had the opportunity to meet him and ask him, Professor, what happened? He had no answer. Okay, so the intellectuals, they have a problem, because problem of survival. And that's why our role as intellectuals, university professors, lecturers, has been taken by people, callers on radio, Uganda Callers Association, people who dropped out in various primary schools and whatever, but they are very prominent than us. They have even organized themselves into an organization. And sometimes even all the political players go to them, pay them money behind so that they call to abuse others. Then for us, we call ourselves. Those of us who are still talking, then people wonder, they even fear for you. You man, are you safe? But when you are a Muslim like me, you say I am safe. Why? There is nothing that will happen to me which Allah has not decided. The Quran says, "Ma yusibana illa ma kataba Allah lana. Huwa maulana wa ala Allah falyatawakkal al-mu'minun." There is nothing that will happen to you except what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has destined for you. Why? He is our provider, he is our protector. Huwa maulana. Maula means the Lord. Then the verse ends, wa ala Allah falyatawakkal al-mu'minun. To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the believers must rely on. Today, some believers don't rely on the Almighty. They are relying on the political figures, security officers. They fear you as if you are God. We are very few who remain in who don't fear you. You security power here. So that is the bigger problem, my colleague Ndebesa. Then the role of civil society. The civil societies are in danger themselves. Today's newspaper, you hear this. Government slaps tighter rules on NGOs. And they say, in a bid to regulate the operations of non-government organizations, the government has issued fresh regulations. Specifically, NGOs are concerned, NGOs are concerned about the regulations requiring them to get clearance before getting some services. Just registering a SIM card in the name of a civil society organization or an NGO, it is almost now impossible. Reason, because these NGOs are looked at as a problem. So the role we are talking about, they cannot play it because they have been threatened. Okay, they can't receive funding, they cannot whatever. Now, to operate in a district, even if you are taking water to them, they say you must have a memorandum of understanding with the district. Okay, imagine going to Rensinga where I was born, where the water source, which was a swamp, has dried up because of degradation. If I want to sink there a borehole, they want me to come to Ntungamo and sign a memorandum of understanding, not only with the cow, RDC, Chamanero C5V, TCDOE, Health, whatever. All of them must sign on that document. If I don't have it, they may say, don't do it here. But people, because they are in need, they just accept you, you go and do it and run away. But if they are chasing you, they can follow you on that and ask you, where is the argument that made you go and operate in Ulisa or in Kitugum or whatever? So the NGOs also have a problem. They may fail to do it because they have turned into enemies. The other comments I will be just when I am winding up. So in my conclusion, which is the beginning of my talk, number one. Okay. Number one, I will just go through quickly. We cannot discuss ADF in isolation. Fortunately, he has helped me. My information about ADF, I don't copy it from anybody who has written, because I read and either be dismissed. I copy it from myself. Now the question is, are you ADF? No. I am a Muslim leader who is concerned with Muslim community, and because ADF, when it became a rebel and therefore is being chased, it leaves behind the widows, it leaves behind orphans, okay? And me as a leader, this boy will come to me for helping. For example, I am paying tuition for over 300 orphans. Some of them may be ADF orphans. One of them who came and picked food from my home because somebody gave me food to give to orphans. And I called this woman who had 8 orphans from Wakiso. She picked the food. I don't know who saw her. She was asked by the security where she reports regularly that what had you going to do to Imam Kasosi's home? She did not come to my home. She came to my office as an imam, but she was asked that question. So when you go deep to see what these people were discussing, those could be the causes of the problem. If somebody now gets insecure like that and has these orphans and they cannot find, and some of these orphans are old enough, if somebody is recruiting them, will they really remain there? So that's why he said some of the methods, or they said some of the methods and tactics that people are using to curb this are not sustainable. And they would be helpers, we are also perceived as enemies, and it's the bigger problem. So that's why I'm asking. So the establishment in Uganda, meaning the government, recycles ADF narrative with some international geopolitical inclinations. That's why today ADF is no longer, it has no longer, does not have only one council, since they call it Islamic. Let me put it in an Islamic tunic council like this one. They have several ones. At one point, they will become ISIS. Another point, they become Al-Shabaab. At another point, they will call them the older one, the parent organization of terrorism according to the West for the Muslims, Al-Qaeda. Okay? And many of you intellectuals, you even don't ask yourselves, how did Al-Qaeda come into existence? Who is this Osama bin Laden? You don't go beyond the curtain to read the new other sources other than those provided by the West. If you ask Dr. Kisure, who was in Saudi Arabia as a student then, when Osama bin Laden was recruited, he will tell you, Osama bin Laden at that time, he was a postgraduate student at the University, King, I think, of the University in Jeddah, doing a master's degree in MBA, because originally he's an engineer. And his family's company, the Bin Laden company, was the biggest, I think, construction company in Saudi Arabia. He sacrificed that, and they recruited him, the Americans, took him to Afghanistan to organize the Jihad, what they are now calling about here. Jihad is there, which led to the collapse of the Soviet Union. When they collapsed, he looked at all the loopholes, and then he said, we can manage this. Then he established his organization called Al-Qaeda, meaning our base, our system, the systematic way of doing things. Then the West called it a terrorist group. Many people don't ask themselves like that. So equally, ADF, if you look, Jamil Mukuru is in custody 7 years. Why don't they try him? Because they have him. Why don't they try him? The reason why they have a problem in trying him is because the charges that enabled him to be extradited to Uganda are not what the Ugandan government want to put on them. But now, in view of the extradition treaty they used, they will have a problem. Therefore, they choose keep him incarcerated. The good thing we have him. Does that one help the situation? Answer is no. Because actually, it increases people to think that there is injustice here. Okay? So 7 years in Ruzira here. Not tried. Okay? So we have a problem. Then, and the problem is because of geopolitical inclination of the whole issue of terrorism and also how they view Islam. The world was thrown in a very complicated drive when Islam was, when some Muslims were conscripted by both its haters or enemies and its own members who use it to achieve personal goals. So when somebody uses your faith or your, do you call it that? The answer is no. Then there is a trend being perpetuated by mostly the so-called international community that Muslims are the actual danger towards world peace. And that's why it is very easy. Talk about Al-Shabaab, talk about whatever, talk about the others you don't. People talk about them very slightly. We have a vivid example of terror in this region. The 1994 war in Rwanda, the massacres there. Okay? You know what happened? Those of us who are far away from Rwanda, where I stay, I stay on the border between the border of Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, in Gaba there, in Umunyonyo. We saw bodies from Rwanda, some of them up to Gaba here. Now, where was Islam about that? And some people don't mention, because they have written, for example, that all people who ran into mosques were protected, irrespective of meeting there, Hutu or Tutsi. But very few people, such information cannot come out. Why? Because the West has designed Islam as the actual enemy. And in order to do that, what has happened? There is a trend being perpetuated by most of the so-called, I have mentioned that one. Now, what have they done? These people, in their agenda, they have crafted, okay, a highly sophisticated global system by the global powers, and they are employing it. They have employed very senior people as spiners. Spiners. They will get a small information, say a lot about it, and then everybody who does not bother to find to make his eyes through that opaque thing to see what is going on in the corridor there, accept that, oh, this is SPAC. But if you interrogated some of the writings about ADF, you will wonder. And why ADF becomes a real threat? When you want to argue like I'm urging, they present the Chichwamba case. But the question is, was the Chichwamba case really ADF? Why is it that it has some similarities with certain things that happened in the Royal Triangle and other things that happened in Teso and others that occurred in northern Uganda? You see, when you go for all those three I have mentioned, versus UNRA, it was NRA. Versus ADF, it is NRA. Versus UPA, it is NRA. Versus Road Resistance Army, it is NRA. There is a one common factor on the other side. We have different ones, but the happenings are the same. In my religion, the Prophet told us that those people who will live longer will receive very surprising things. They will see a lot of things. And that's what we are waiting for these Mwendebesas after the exit of NRM regime. And they begin to write their history, which they are compiling, which you have heard him talk about many things. I don't think he doesn't have capacity to write them. That when he writes them, what will happen? He has used the Kakwenza's thing as an example. Okay, so these people, they have employed numerous spinners to disseminate the deceptive narrative using the media, okay? And due to their connections and influence, it is spreading like wildfire. And that's why we have such a thing as Adf Islamic. And unfortunately, academics may also become a victim. However, that has not stopped, despite all this drama, camouflage, whatever. Islam is growing very rapidly. When the US deployed in Iraq to fight against Saddam Hussein, about 20% of the soldiers they took in Iraq came when they were Muslims. After 9/11, many people embraced Islam through reading, because information people did not know about Islam emerged, and many of them are embracing Islam. In conclusion, because I have 1 minute left, locally, where is the problem? Some elements in ADF, those who are Muslim, they felt insecure because of the situation that emerged. And he has mentioned it. Government siding with a group. Dr. Kisude here, through his organization, the World Muslim League, they organized a meeting for Uganda Muslim Supreme Council, members of the General Assembly, where I was privileged to be a member, and we are taken into Mbarara. And the team had been organized, the mediators, by the president. Listen to their names. Very prominent Ugandans. Professor John Wilson Kanyama was the chair. He presented a 31-page document, which I have, very interesting. And out of anger, when he was frustrated, he wrote a book. I was privileged to read the manuscript of his book. I know before he published it. It is there. Number 2, Ambassador Raphael Chan. You know him, he was a PSC and ambassador, Raphael Chan. Captain Gertrude Njuba. Engineer Katama, I don't recall his other name. I think he died recently. Engineer Katama. He's a Mchiga man. And Hajat Anuna. The only Muslim on that committee was Hajat Anuna. The rest. And then they convinced us that if you drop the 2 leaders, things will be okay. We dropped both of them. And I was at war with Chisule, because to convince me to accept to drop my leader then. We were at war. I told him, Chisule, Dr. Chisule, this is not possible. Museveni is not telling you the truth. And it came out that he did not tell them the truth. We dropped the 2 leaders, had one when we came. Those of you are old enough, you know what happened in Koro on independence celebrations, when 2 Muslim leaders were invited both on the occasion, and there was somebody, Kakokora, somebody to say prayers, somebody hit the other because he wanted to take the opportunity. Embarrassment of the Muslim community. So when people see this, then that's why the origins of what they call ADF, who were about their Islamic activities, began from there. Because all of them were based in Nakasero. We are told we are going to swearing in the leader at Sawaya Queen, the then Minister of Internal Affairs, the late Samson Seka, made a very big document, and they read it in Uganda. They said, "Abantu mwena abana kungana okulaiza mufuti ku Sawaya Queen tujja kubabunyisa emiwabo, that whoever will gather to swear in the new, we shall take Himunga Kakaba." When people said, "Oh, Kukaba," then people went and took over what he was talking about, Supreme Council. What happened, you know, history. Police officer may know. They lost 4 police officers, and I think 3 dogs in that encounter, and 2 Muslims that were there. Those are the records. But this will not read anymore. That's why me as a person who is there, I follow them and I know. So from then, these people were taken to prison. When they were taken to prison, 400 of them arrested and taken to prison. Kazini, at that time, was the commander of the military intelligence. He came there. They arrested all of them. They took them to prison. They released 385 and remained with 15. The 15 that they remained with it is the seed that brought out what you call ADF today. Oh, that Muslim group went allied with Nauru to become Allied Democratic Forces. One of them was Jamil Mukuru. But how did they? Something which you must investigate. In the prison, they find the man called the Joseph Ruze. Joseph Ruze was of the Chirimutu group. It was a rebel group of, they were forming an opposition thing about Museveni. They had been arrested and put in prison, okay, with the late Evaristo Nyanzi, that team. So they found him there. Then Ruze, he had found, he was trying to fight the government. He did not have people. Now he got opportunity to see 400 people. And then when he remained with this, he convinced them. When they came out, they went to their place in Buseruka. And from Buseruka, they ended up in Congo. But every day, now they use them. When a Muslim cleric is killed, we are told ADF. When whatever happens, we are told ADF. Let me tell you, at a given time, ADF held territory in Uganda, in the Rwenzori area, up to Uganda. Whom Muslim cleric did they kill? But 20 years later, about maybe 20 years later, or about 15 years later, in 2012, we are told that they are the ones who killed Abu Karimu, they killed Bahiga, they killed Chiria, they killed Muayi, they killed and others. If you ask his department, you are the investigators. Where is the credible information that leads to this? Absolutely not. Where is even one single report about they killed Kagezi? Now they are the ones who killed Chirumira. Chirumira was fighting with police itself. The leadership of Chirumira, you know him. They killed Abiriga. All of these are attributed to what? To ADF. It is a pure lie intended to convince you that ADF is the threat. The ADF that is in Congo is no longer active, according to my source. They became civilians like the Rwandese who came from Rwanda during those days and came to Uganda and settled. These people have been settled, they are settled in Congo, they are given a big chunk of area, that's where they are living normal life. That's where they call it, they say it is theirs, they call it an Islamic state. That's where the only thing that when you are there, it is Islamic rules that what? You can go there. And that's the real issue. But here, because they ever since we went, how many months? Operation Shuja. How many months now? About 3. We are coming to almost what? 3 months. Tell us, show us any engagement that has been there, a real fighting between ADF and the Ugandan forces. Nothing. Even when they took over an airport, it was a bush. And they said, this is the airport. That's okay. So it is unfortunate. The emerging information now is saying some UN agencies and some big people were using these people because they settled down in order to get these minerals we are talking about, or resources from Congo only. For other reasons, we are now there. I don't want to venture deeply into that, but I want to say therefore, if we want, so somehow, if you read a lot and you see what colonialism did to Muslims, he mentioned it, educational marginalization. You see, in 1956, the colonial government gave out education funds, money, and it was, they gave out, I think, 136,000 pounds to develop education. The Muslim community was given 213 pounds, 230 out of 136. What percentage is that? At that time, we had more than 50 schools. Now, when each school was supposed to get four pounds. So those are issues many people don't mention. And so when you get people who have decided to become militant, and they can use it as an opportunity to give them a good cover. So how do we? So Muslim, look what happened in 79. Where we come from, he knows. In Shema, we now have a mass grave in Nyamitanga. People killed just because they were Muslims. What he called a reverse. Okay. Did I mean favor Muslims only? No. During the economic war, I think non-Muslims got much more than the Muslims. I will tell you for a fact, and he knows it. Before the economic war, Mbarara town, the one you know, there were over 10 Muslims with structures and buildings, and they were rich. Asmani Matovu, Abdu Kakule, Mbirinji, Swaimani Mkasa, Jafari Mukasa, Jafari Sentamu, and Sadi Kizito, in Samba. All of these men were rich, and there were only 2 Christians with buildings on their own. The late Baliam Jura and somebody else I have forgotten. But after the economic war, people like Johnny Shekhar and many others came and picked because they were given. But people don't consider that. They always look at Idi Amin from an angle where he is protecting the Muslims. It is unfortunate. So the problem, look, during the war, NRA war, it is only the Muslims that were invaded in a mosque on Eid day, and 6 of them were killed in Tambala. Here. Very little was said about it. But over this, tell us, no church, no whatever. You see, so the problem, as long as the local problems remain unresolved, we shall have people who may not think faster go into this. I am one of the people who are opposed to war. And in terms of insurgencies or rebellion in the form Museveni took it. One important thing, because Museveni succeeded with it because the people, civilians wanted it. After Museveni, Ugandan civilians will never accept anybody to organize a rebellion in their area. Why? After the war, they received the Bioyajanswa. Where Triangle, that's where he's born. I was in their village recently, Katoke. Deep in Nakasek. When you pass there, you will know. So people who were rich, they were whatever, now they cannot allow. What have they benefited? Salim Saleh to go there and take a whole villages and villages in a place called Namukekera, and he's there now, they say, an industrial park. When you go there, and if you want to find the Ugandans in this industrial park, you may not find them. Is it because Ugandans are poor? No. It is because the yardstick used to get there, they may not get because of very clear reasons I don't want to mention here because I may make some of you run out of this room. Lastly, so such a people will then claim you call them radicals, you call them other names, and they move on. Lastly, perpetual injustice is the problem. Okay, we are denied space. Then we are talking sustainability means. What does sustainability mean? The only way, if we want to get sustainable solution other than the force they are using, is to bring back a justice and fair to the Muslim community and to address some of the issues they are talking about. Even affirmative action, which was a big song by the NRA as they came in, the Muslims have never been beneficiaries of this affirmative action. Do you want it? My answer is no. Because for us in Islam, we are supposed to work for ourselves. What do we need? A conducive environment to let us work. I sometimes make people funny that if I work at the way I'm working, okay, I will also be able to stay in Kororo and buy a Prado. But because of nepotism and other factors, I cannot buy a Prado, I cannot go to Kororo, I always find a small place where to live in. So that is the biggest challenge. So if we want to address this, sir, talk about that. Therefore, this problem of international agency and their ideology, okay, terrorism against Islam, fundamentalism, jihad, all these are coined to make it acceptable, but they will not happen. And then those who think that by using these terms, or fighting Muslims, they will eliminate Islam, they are just joking. Why? The owner of Islam has said this. That is my final word. Inna nahnu nadarna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafizun. That we are the ones who reveal this message of Islam, and we are the protectors. That's why the more we get threatened, the more recruits we get in terms of faith and belief, and the more committed Muslims become. And the moment they become committed, the better for us as a community, or those who want to see. Therefore, the crash of civilization, Huntington. I don't know how many of you have read Huntington's book, The Crash of, Good Muslim, Bad Muslim, by Imam Dan. Or Darul Harb wa Darul Salam, by Professor Al-Mazrui. I don't know how many people have read that book. Darul Harb means the state of war, and Darul Salam, the state of peace. Mazrui has written a big book about that. Read this. Finally, you can, how many people have read this book or have seen it? President Idi Amin, a narrative of his rule. It is advertised every Sunday in the New Vision newspaper. But people will not buy it because they say it is expensive. Buy it. It is 100,000. It is by Mwonge Charles William. He has a column in New Vision. And every week, every Sunday, they advertise it. Even tomorrow, they will advertise it. This one. The 100,000. The others who want to understand Islam in Uganda properly, this ones we wanted yesterday. We have worked, done research, and compiled this book about the history of Islam, starting where it came from in Oman, because largely the Islam we have here came from Oman. So the Sultanate of Oman, the Sultanate of Zanzibar, and the Kingdom of Uganda that received them, and other areas, it is here. It is also 100,000. If you want it in Uganda, you will have it. If you not read Arabic, also have a version in Arabic. This one. It has a detail of some of the things you are talking about inside here. All what you call ADF, the various groups, all of them are here. If you open it, you see all the pictures of the Jamil Mukus, the Kamogas, the Mobajes, the Silman, all from the time of Nuhu Karim. They are all here. So you have the opportunity to buy it. But I know you as academicians, you can. But many people will won't, because they don't know how to read. After all, they say, how many pages? 600. This is a 660-page book. Very few people. These ones are the ones reading. The majority of you if you are not in an academic circle, you cannot read this. So I want to thank those who gave me this opportunity to be here, and many things have not been touched, but you are free to contact me. And as I told you the other time, during such a discussions, let us have many more people from the security, not these police officers, ISO, CMI, let them be here. And we exchange with them frankly. Then we shall help our country to get where we want. But if you keep intimidating people and they decide to go underground, then you are in trouble. You are not safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Imam. It couldn't have been much sweeter than it has been. Getting it from the horse's mouth, certainly. We hope that those following us online can still hang on a bit. We want to use about 10 minutes to give Ambassador Kisure some time to give us what he knows about it. Ambassador Kisure is in the audience, and you're most welcome, Ambassador. About 10 minutes, then we get into a discussion.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Amma ba'd. Let me first of all thank Professor Solomon, who invited me to attend this conference. I didn't know about it, but a certain officer from the police linked him with me, and they asked me to come and attend. But I come a bit very late. I didn't know the audience very well. Is it composed of students, officials of the government, what? So I will not come out with my clear statements about the issue, but please also let me add on to thank Professor for his wonderful intervention that he has come out. I first thank the presenter because when I joined him, in my personal evaluation, he has come out with the main issues that we have to handle if we are to deal with terrorism or Adf. Then, Professor came out with a lot of intervention, a lot of points, but I agree with him in all what he has said, except one point, that those who are fighting in Nakasero and what were fighting for property and money. No, that's not correct. We have several reasons why they are fighting, why they are complaining, what so. And that is, unfortunately, that is a popular understanding of non-Muslims regarding those fights. But it is our duty to tell, no, these people are fighting because of this. When I come back to the presenter, I don't know that I missed a lot, but I think also he did not do it, as I heard the professor saying, that he did not define terrorism, so that we can know exactly whom are we talking about. Because if you did it, would have, I don't know whether you justified it because you don't have an agreed definition of terrorism. Everybody defines according to his interest and wish. I don't know whether that is the secret that he made you to escape it and leave it, but the professor observed that it would have been good if we came at least with the one definition that can at least define for us terrorism, and consequently we link it with the Adf. So also I would have wanted that if you talked about common elements of terrorism, it would have been very, very, very good, so that our students or the media or the public would have understood it. I'm not going to present about them, but let me just come out with my main points that would have been good. Also, communication and the targets of terrorism, the major goals and the strategy of terrorism, the common perpetrators of terrorism. How do we distinguish terrorism from the conventional war, from the guerrilla war, and from jihad, which is one of the main issues I have seen in your presentation. So if it is, I think if we are to understand the terrorism very correctly, we have to know about these points. And here in particular, that to differentiate jihad from terrorism is very, very, very important. Because those people who are ADF arguing like you are arguing, or reasoning as you do reason, they have their own reasons. So for example, they are saying they are carrying out jihad. Then we need to know what is jihad. Who can authorize jihad? And in which situation jihad is allowed. So those are issues I think that as you have laid the framework of this research, this should not be a beginning, but this we should not stop at this point. We can enlarge and have all points covered in the presentation so that our students and the population, our security people also get to know exactly how these things are defined, types of terrorism, how are they? Also, I have not heard you talking about them. But as we said, we are time barred. I cannot leave that issue unanswered. Is Adf Islamic? Whether Islamist, to me the answer will be the same. You see, whether Islamic or Islamist, the answer is the same. So I think when I put it in another way, I can't forget to thank you for defining Islam as you defined it. For your information, I am a specialist in Islamic law, holding PhD degree in principles of Islamic jurisprudence. I am the first one in Uganda to get that degree. Uganda, and I used to teach in Makerere University for 7 years, faculty of art. I was the head of Islamic department for 7 years. Then I was in Mbale for also 7 years as external examiner. But here, from that capacity, I think it is necessary that we answer that question and we don't leave it hanging. So here, but let us put it another way. Say, why terrorism is wrongly linked to the faith? Can that lead us to an answer? Why terrorism is wrongly linked to the faith? I will give you only 5 reasons or 3, but without explanation. It is wrongly linked to the faith because Islam is the religion of peace, mercy, and blessings. That's the principle in Islam. All what we want is peace. So you can't bring the opposite and say that is Islam or it is part of Islam. Secondly, Islam places the authority to saturate information about security and stability only in the hands of the head of state and the leaders below him. So here, if we have that war and we call it Islam or linked to Islam, it is against that principle, which I cannot explain. Then, number 3, Islam values the lives of people. Do those people also value the lives of people? If they don't, definitely they are out of the faith. And also, I can give another question, raise another question which can assist us to understand, is Adf Islamic or Islamist? Confusion that implicates Islam with terrorism. We have several confusions. If you are not trained to understand them or to know them, you will conclude that they are the same. But those are, to me, I term them as a confusion. Some of them are these: failure to distinguish between jihad and terrorism. That is a very wide topic. First of all, you have to know what is jihad. You have to know under which circumstances jihad is allowed. Then, if you fail, you will end up mixing both. And as a brief, it has several definitions also. But he hinted you on one. But the time is not allowing so that we can say what you hinted about is this is its detail. Another one is the lack of adequate Islamic knowledge that enables those sheikhs who purport for jihad to correctly interpret and properly implement Quranic verses. This is a very big problem. We have it in the country, but people don't realize it, that the people who are trying to interpret the Quran and implement it, they are not trained. That's why they mix up. And they don't know how to separate this from that one. Thirdly, lack of knowledge that the whole Sharia laws revolves around protecting 6 items. But that is what we call Islamic objectives. I cannot list them now because we did not just come to, but we are highlighting where we think that we can sit together, join the research, and come out with a comprehensive presentation that will cover all this. Then, finally, lack of a system for appointing, ranking, and recognizing sheikhs in Uganda. Here, everybody is a sheikh. Everybody in the Islamic faith, even the somebody who goes to Makkah and buys an Arabic garment, will come here claiming as a big person in the faith. And that has led very big confusion in the community, including some people who are referred to be ADF, because the way they are interpreting the Quran is not the normal way.
in interest of time, I'd request Professor Mwangusia to elaborate on how does the population can be involved, and specifically to answer our question in sustaining the approach of dealing with the threat of ADF. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amos. How do we get the population to get involved in fighting the ADF? Is there any other? Okay, please go on.
Thank you very much. Thank you all members.
If you could.
As a student of security and study in Kumba University. Mainly, I want to go straight because I'm in the forces. I'm a police officer. I want to look at this aspect of security, as Professor Asimwe put it, Professor Mangusha has put it. Should we get out of traditional security, as my brother Kakuru was trying to ask? The traditional security was looking at only security for security personnel. Gone are the days. We should look at other security approaches, the human security, the psychological. We are looking at the traditional, forgetting other aspects. Food security, very good. As Imam has put it, for him is investing in producing for us food. When you are hungry, to be honest, you are a threat to us. And it will not be easy for us to come and begin saying, okay, you went and sold this matoke, I start fighting you straight away. No, we need to move away from the colonial approach of security to the human security approach. The second point here, Professor, I would wish, you know, you are a historian and I admire you. That's why when I showed you my last born, and I hope you will follow your footsteps. Let's look at these two theories. When we look at these two theories, I hope it may help us, and at the end of the day, you and your team, you can forge a way forward as a team. Let's look at the Shant theory and the iceberg. The Shant theory, this is basically the cultural, historical activity theories. As you've put it, this thing has not started today. We are talking of the Islam, we are talking of what? When you look at all this, you have been there. Why can't we go back the drawing board, forge a way forward, together with the academicians who are here, and find a way? Because you are now saying, the state, we are not giving you opportunity. We can use the other group of the Christian, what? This one's of the Christian, very good. The John Christian, yes, and you come. If you can call us, and very good, very good. Such exactly. Then when we come to iceberg theory, we are looking at something on top here, but there's something down that you who has been here, plus Imam Kasoz, we are now your children. You have the role to play to see that we have got peace, and this will even bring in my brothers concerned that how do we come in as civilian as far as handling the EDF aspect is concerned. If we can use that, I think it can help us. Finally, I want to thank my doctor here that maybe next time you don't only ambush us as students. We need to prepare. You know, in Nkumba University, we used to organize this. Bring in other people, and in case they are not coming, let them send a representative. I thank you very much. As a student, that's what I can say. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Moses Otara, from the security sector, but also a student. I also want to request that when we are moving away from the traditional security, we also remember to securitize gender. In fact, In fact, I don't know how I landed here, but it is clear that security is a man's thing. But if there is another question, let's take it and then we. But in the academia, can we have a third question and then the presenter and panelists take it on?
Thank you so much, Chair, Professor, and our presenters this afternoon. My name is Bosa Sulaiman. I am a lecturer here at Nkumba University in the Department of Public Administration. My colleagues here are so much into security. Me, I want to organize the public such that the security really is good. I want to thank Imam Kasozi for honoring the invitation to come here and enlighten us more about Islam. And also, of course, representing the faith. I want to make two comments, then one will be a question. The first one is that we are all aware that Islam is a good faith. And it is a faith that preaches peace. That's why whenever we say Nabi Muhammad, we say peace be upon him. Now, that word is a signal that all of us are really peaceful. The only problem is that there are some sects, small sections of people out there, not only in Uganda, but also all over the world, that attach themselves to the Muslim faith and make it bad. It's not only in Islam, even in other faiths, they are there. The only thing is that in Islam, it is more sounding, and also it is where some of these terror attacks have been initiated from. Now, painting that picture, we can really see that even here it is easy to attach the Muslim to the Adf. Now, our role as scholars, but also the ones who are preaching in the faith, is to come out and distance ourselves from such acts, because they are not Islamic, first of all. Not only in Uganda, but all over the world. How do we come out? Because sometimes when these terror attacks happen, coincidentally, people from the faith sometimes come out and say, we are the ones. Even though they are not the ones, sometimes maybe they want to show off, but they come out and say, we are the ones. Coincidentally, they may be in that faith. Now, the faith has nothing to do with the acts that they are doing, because the faith does not teach that. I want to thank you for enlightening the fact that the biggest challenge also within the faith is that whoever comes up and understands Arabic and can make some interpretation is a sheikh, is an imam, and therefore is a leader in Islam, which is not the case. Uganda Muslim Supreme Council should come out clearly and highlight who are the leaders of Islam. Unlike the Catholic faith and others who have got a structured system of administration, I want the viewers and the panelists to understand the background of Islam when it came here. For our faith, it came here, we were businessmen. The Arabs came trading at the coast. They didn't come with a script that this is exactly. So now, eventually, we started preaching the word of God. Our colleagues came with a script. We are using schools, we are using hospitals to give back to the public, then later on preach the faith. And the leadership was very clear. Ours, because of that informal structure that started in when we were coming, many people got confused on how this religion is running. Now that explains to you, even in other regions, there are sects, there are differences. Ours are more clear. Maybe Sheikh will make a comment on Chivuli and Odi Kampala. Now, this misunderstanding can also create a ground for others to think that since they are also amongst themselves having a problem, to agree on who is right, maybe they are part of the ADF. So I want to make it clear that Islam, for me as a scholar, I have read the Quran, I have read the word, the words of Muhammad and everything that he said. He never preached terrorism. But also, I want to make mention that the faith has got the aspect of jihadism, because when the faith came in the beginning, people were fighting it. So it had to fight back. Those were those days. There has never been any jihad of late that we are fighting, because now, even in America, there are mosques. So no one is fighting the faith of Islam, because we have accepted it is part of the other faith or faiths. So the jihadism was there. I'm sure that in the past when those wars for fighting to protect the religion were there were stationed wars. You go to the battlefield for those who are fighting Islam, and then you fight. Even there, they were protecting the civilians from getting involved in the war and therefore endangering the society. And then the last one, in the interest of time, is a question to Professor Simu. Is the interpretation of the ADF, is proper interpretation of what is the ADF? Now, that interpretation, if it comes out clearly, then we can distinct the Islam away from the fact that it is not the ADF, but the faith of God. I thank you.
Thank you, audience. Online, we have someone asking that how sustainable is Uganda's approach in dealing with the threats, and he expects the moderators to include the cost implication of Uganda's approach, since he presumes that today's sustainability is more associated with economics. And then we can discuss on what can be the lasting approach to sort of the ADF question. In the interest of time, I am going to give the presenter and panelists how many minutes? Since you're men, you determine. 2 minutes each, and then we shall close it. So Professor Solomon first.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chairperson, thank you very much for chairing this very important session. And I want to thank my fellow panelists, Professor Ndevesa and Imam Kasozi. So now I'm going to start calling Imam Kasozi. But at first I thought Imam was a title only. Yeah, but thank you for building on the presentation. Mine was actually, as I informed the members when we were starting, was to kick the ball roll so that the panelists can take it on. And I'm very happy the panelists have taken on the debate. And the SESAC, or the Security Studies and Analysis Center and Nkumba, picked on this topic because it is there in the world. It is there. People are asking that. And so we wanted the academia to come and also have a say. It is there, people are saying them, and I'm happy today we have tried to clarify some of these issues. I did not define terrorism. Of course, I wanted the panelists to define it. But for me, even in the topic was very clear. There's nothing terrorism in that topic. Yes, there's nothing terrorism in the topic, and it was deliberate. Because we were only asking ADF. We didn't want to call ADF a terrorist group, but we wanted to find out, is it Islamic? But of course, you can't run away from terrorism. And one reason I wanted also to avoid is that, some definitions focus on the mode of operations, while others tend to focus on the persons involved. But those involved in terms, rather than the factors that give rise to terrorism. So I have a problem with the definition of terrorism because it's more on the mode or on the operation, on the people who are claimed to be there. But the definition does not look at they don't focus on what gives rise to these acts of terror. And I think as an academia and practitioners, we need also to look at that to just, and also these definitions have been put there by some people. If you look at Bush's definition, if you look at, in the past, of course, the professor of history will tell you, terrorism was a positive thing in the French Revolution, isn't it? Yeah, it was positive. The terror was positive. Terrorism was positive in apartheid. Some people who look at this, they use terrorism positively. So now who defines, but we need to define it, of course. Today we are calling it the unlawful use of force or violence against persons or property to intimidate or coerce a government or the people for reasons of furthering political and social objectives. Who has defined this? It is government. States have given us this definition. So I don't know whether we all agree that there's a definition. That is but the universal definition of terrorism. Thank you very much. Bosa, yes, that's a very good question. What is ADF? I think you came late. I tried to define what ADF is. And I'm happy Ambassador Kisule almost answered the question because we seem to have not really hint on the question, is Adf Islamic? Of course, I argued that Adf is called Allied Democratic Force. It's an allied group. It allied with other groups, NALU and West Nile Bank Front, form ADF. But it's a multi-sector, multi-ideological. That's what I said. It has different facets. One of them is Islam, which they picked as an ideology. So therefore, it is up to the leaders, as I like what the leaders said here, it's up to the leaders of Islam and also in academia to just fight, look at what is Islam, and I also define what Islam is, and I agree Islam is a religion of peace. And I even labored with the fear of contradiction, but I try to give up the 5 pillars of Islam, and I'm happy Ambassador has not contradicted me, and he thanked me, at least I defined very well. So, but I think it is the duty of now the religious leaders to give knowledge what Islam is and the real meaning of Islam to the young people who are being indoctrinated by some people. In fact, there's one scholar who says Islam actually has been it is suffering because of the new. It has suffered an injustice. That's what I said, at the hands of the new Muslims. Islam has suffered an injustice at the hands of the new Muslims. And I think I want to agree with that. The new Muslims seem to have misinterpreted Islam. So it's the duty of preachers to come up and give us. But the fact is, the majority of the terrorists in the world, it is said, have done whatever they have done, the acts in the name of Islam. And they have claimed so. Even ADF has claimed so. So now, what do we say? I said maybe they are using it as an ideology to mobilize, like LRA used the, what is it called? Lord Christianity. I don't know what I use is also to mobilize. But I think I don't know whether the Christians, I don't know what was their position on LRA, what they say. I don't want to go very much in the religious wars. But thank you very much. I want to hand over to Professor to give more clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, the audience. I want first to disabuse the audience about our role here as presenters and discussants. We have not come here to give answers. We have come here to provoke a debate and a continuous debate, not the answers. If anybody claims here that he has a correct line, I will tell you are wrong. Neither me, nor him, nor the other one has a correct line. But we can share and see how to move forward. Let's have this discussion in the public sphere and find solutions without anybody claiming he has a monopoly of ideas. So if we have provoked your thinking, then we have succeeded. But for you to expect us to be having the final answers is a tall order. Thank you. Now, there was a hint on the question of Islamism and Islamic. Yes, some people have come to differentiate the two using the two concepts. Somehow, when we are dealing with concepts, we have to find clarity in order to move forward. Noting aware, but being aware that those concepts have limitations. Nevertheless, we must have concepts. By the way, a concept and a word are two different. When you are defining a word, you give almost one answer. A concept has got very many meanings. Are we together? So, I still insist that without saying that the answer is definitive, that ADF or any other outfit that fights uses the garb, the clothes of Islam, to fight for political ends or mobilize for other ends is Islamist or Islamism. Imam Kasozi here seems to disagree and say they are the same. They are not the same. I want a linguist here to help us, maybe, if he can. When we say popular, when we use the word popular, yeah? Does it have the same meaning as populism? Those who know English language, who can? They don't mean the same. That one comes from the other doesn't mean the same. That ism, ISM or something similar to that, has a negative connotation. So that's why I'm saying, let's distinguish between being Islamic and being an Islamist. That is the one which is a connotation which is different. It's like saying ethnic group. Ethnic groups are innocent. But when you say ethnicism or ethnicity, it changes the meaning. It has that negative connotation where you are using the ethnic group to others, to discriminate. So that still, I insist that it can be a concept that we can use to explain the phenomenon of violence, by the way, not necessarily terrorism, because the violence does not come only through terrorism. Terrorism is now the most recent. Even ADF first didn't use terrorism. Terrorism, they have just used it. Terrorism is where you kill non-combatants. You don't target those you are opposed to. You just kill or maim or cause alarm in order to make a statement. But ADF at times targets the people. So even likewise, when you say economism, academicism, it's different from saying academic. So I still insist that it can be used. Nevertheless, it can be improved. It can be improved to understand it. Now, there is also this notion which Doctor here was bringing out to say that you see, and many others have said it, that you see, the Islamic tenets or doctrines are for peace, are for love. And therefore, how do we conclude? Let me use Christianity so that I am not mistaken, since I'm a Christian. The tenets of Christianity, according to Jesus and Paul, they were for peace and love. Are we together? But for 1,500 years, Christianity was using violence. It was practicing violence. So let's now separate the tenets, the beliefs, the doctrines with the practice and traditions. Because it can easily be used differently. NRM normally says we according to the constitution and according to our political ideology, we don't torture. Doesn't NRM torture? So we have to separate NRMism and NRM. There is NRMism which ends up torturing. So the practice and the beliefs are different. So when we are talking about this issue of ADF, we have to look at the beliefs and the practice. And we have to show how some organizations put on the garb, put on the clothes, put on the beliefs and doctrines of a faith or even an ideology in order to further their own interests. And you use it as a mobilization tool. You even use it as a mobilization statement. Allah Akbar, bas, you go. By the time people know, you have already thrown a sword through their stomach. That doesn't mean that Islam tells the people to go and sword people. That it doesn't mean. So we have to look at the transformation of a system and a belief from being peaceful to being violent, so that we take it back to the original tenets of that faith or that doctrine. So we have to be alive to the abuse of faith and admit it, so that we are not apologists. In Christianity, in Christian theology, there are people who go and study apologetics. You know it? Apologetics. Yours is to apologize. I don't think here we are for apologetics. We have to see how a faith has been abused and disabuse it of that abuse. Are we together? But to do that, we first admit that there are people who have abused it, and they have abused it, and be alive to it, and agree, and therefore address it. But when you continue hiding to say, no, Islam is about peace. I know salam. Yes, it is about peace. That's its doctrine. But in traditions, in practice, just like Christianity, the Inquisition, did Jesus say people should undergo inquisitions and crusades? But they happened. So we say now, you know, Christ said, Christianity, for us, we are for peace. When they beat you on the left hand, you put there the left. Did the Romans put there the left? Did the British do it? Did the Spaniards do it? So let's be alive to some of these challenges and address them from an academic, intellectual point of view. Separate traditions and beliefs, doctrines, and values even. So I hope I am understood there on that question. The cost implications, yes, there are costs. There are human costs. There are economic costs. There are human costs. There are societal costs. There are political costs, and therefore we should address them. How can the population get involved? You see, we have got different leaders of social groups and social organizations. We can approach them from that. Nevertheless, the government has to take the lead. The state has to take the lead and have a national dialogue. But the state of Uganda today does not favor the national dialogue because it did not initiate it. And therefore, once we got the national dialogue, we might talk about things like the term limits and age limit. So it has been shelved. But we need a national dialogue, including dialogue on Islamism and Islamic. I'm told I don't have time. About securitization, my friend here used the word securitization. Since you are in this department, you need to read the concept of securitization. Actually, securitization, according to the Copenhagen School, is negative. When you say we securitize gender, that is negative. Because securitization, according to securitization theory, is to make an aspect, you make it so security-oriented that you have to use excessive means in order to promote it, that you suspend the normal procedures in order to promote it. Like somehow the government has been securitizing COVID-19 in order to use excessive force. That is the securitization. Finally, the getting out of the traditional security framework, I think we need to get out of the traditional. I did make a distinction between operational matters and governance matters. Security governance, me, you, and everybody should bring together efforts together with the security people, security governance. But now let me ask anybody here who is not a security person, or actor who is not UPDF even, who contributed to the UPDF doctrine? Or how many have even looked at it? Even those who are teaching security. There is a UPDF doctrine published. We never participated in it. So, does it mean only if you are in UPDF, you are concerned about security in this country, or you know something about security only? Should have been discussed by all. That's not an operational question that we are going for an operation. No, we should have discussed some of these things. So we need to look at security governance. You don't just get the Minister of Internal Affairs because it is responsible for security. The Minister of Internal Affairs is a general. The Minister of State for Internal Affairs is a general. The Permanent Secretary is a general. Does it mean internal security is only for the UPDF? I beg to disagree. I thank you.
I would like to thank everybody. Your presence alone makes this good. And I'm also happy that I have been now informed that we have most of the people are from the security. And the one who wanted them to trap your hands, then you are going to sexualize them. Because security people who choose not to put on uniform are not supposed to be known. Otherwise, they become irrelevant if they are known. But all that said, we need to be conscious. Because security does not only mean to put a barricade, to put people in uniform. There are no, even it is you to be conscious of yourself and how you move so that you protect yourself against many things. Some of you who think that you are secure, you are actually more insecure than those you think are insecure, if they are conscious. For example, when you are in a line eating on the cafeteria, are you sure of the place you are going to meet? Supposing somebody put some poison that by the time you reach, you are the victim. Have you ever been conscious of that? That which plate should I use? Should I eat or I shouldn't eat? Much as I'm very hungry. All those are issues of security. If you are given water like this, you just accept it and take it. Do you know how to be security conscious with a bottle like this? Because for you, see, it is sealed, you think it is secure. So all those are security matters. Many people don't take into consideration, and some have become victims. There is a popular quotation, somebody who was poisoned and died, he said, "Oh, these fools have killed me." And unfortunately, he died. I don't want to mention his name. But there are things they posed here, which I think jihadism. Jihad is an Islamic concept. But as Dr. Kisura has put it, who declares jihad and where? Then there's also jihad on your own self, jihad in nafs. Checking yourself to see whether you are implementing what we accepted in Islam. You can, it is a concept. But when people misuse it, do we go with them? If people misuse Islam on for their person, do we take it like that? Because somebody has been caught stealing and he's putting on a suit, a tie, and shoes. Do you throw away your shoes and shirt because the thief was dressed in like them? No. So we are not going to throw our Islam. We are not. For sure, let me tell you, we are not. Because this religion of ours, we are not the choosers. God chose it for us. He even says in the Quran that the one I chose it for you. And for us, you have accepted it. So the only thing that we need to know is to go into dialogue and then to be tolerant. By being tolerant to somebody, it does not mean that you are agreeing with him. You are only giving him opportunity to think, and you also think, so that when you convert, you can talk. This is what I think Mwebisa was talking about, which is unfortunately missing. When you see the activities of torture that have come up, some people, by the way, are just seeing them. The Muslim community started seeing them in 1997. In 1997, many of the things they were done to our people who were arrested during those days. Okay. Recently, I think it's again Kakwenza, who said he was locked up in a toilet and they brought food to him. I don't know whether you read that story. It was in the news. Okay. He's not the first one. Muzei Kahindi Asumani, who was 72 years old in 1998, he's from Yamunuka. He was put in prison in a toilet, and his head hanged down for 2 nights in a toilet. Okay? The late Kiria was pushed to sit on a hot plate. Others who cannot speak for themselves now because they are dead, they are brought closer to what you hear, crocodiles and snakes. All these things are there. But no security officer will come here and tell you that they are there. It only takes a very strong person to discover that. The so-called safe houses, which are torture chambers to me, existed long before, but they were discovered in 1998 when we wrote a letter, the Human Rights Commission, on the 22nd of May, 1998. And Madam Sekaja, who was the chairperson, responded to us. And they said, these people are there, but they are kept in safe houses. By the time they got out, was this a safe house or a torture chamber? Kakwenza and Maseruka, the recent one, Maseruka, they have done us good because for them they have so come up. Many people have been tortured, but they don't say. Terrorism they're talking about, it is only in Uganda where some Muslims were sentenced to life imprisonment because of verbal terrorism. Kamogand group. But recently they were released. Who among us you knows how they were released? Did they receive prerogative of mercy? Did they? Was it? Did they? Did you read it anywhere? We just saw them out of prison. Okay? Maybe for some other. So I want to tell you, as he has put it, according to Professor Mazurui, this is the meaning of terrorism. He says, the weak, he mentioned, he says that for them, they say, we are at war, we are not very strong, every means of warfare is legitimate. Some of these weapons that we use is what the West call terrorism. Terrorism kills 6 people on a bus. When the Americans kill, they really kill. And they really kill. Those were words of Professor Mazurui in 1990 in Makere Main Hall. He gave a presentation, I was present. And I put them in my head and they have never gone away. Every time I remember. But are the Muslims, okay, let us accept Islam, Muslims, they are terrorists. Are they the ones who invented terrorism? Actually, terrorism started to be associated with Islam in 1990 when the Americans stopped Bin Laden and his group to go and evict Saddam Hussein from Kuwait. That's when it started. Read. But there are situations of terror, horror, but people don't call it terrorism. For example, a German scholar was asked about terrorism and Islam, and he said, who started the First World War? He answered, not Muslims. Who started the Second World War? Not Muslims. All these killed many people. Who killed 6 million Jews in the Holocaust? Is Hitler, not Muslim. Who killed about 20 million Aborigines in Australia? Not Muslims. Who sent the nuclear bombs to Hiroshima and Nagasaki in Japan? Is America, not Muslims. Who killed more than 100 million Indians in North America? Not Muslims. Who killed more than 50 millions of Indians in South America? not Muslims, who took about 108 million of African people as slaves, and 88% of them died or were thrown overboard in Atlantic Ocean, not Muslims. Therefore, the word terror comes to Islam because they want, well, number one, sometimes when people are not happy that people are becoming Muslims, so they may use it to scare you. So when you are understanding and then say, should I be associated with that, then you give up. But that's not what we're interested in. For you, the security people here, I am frankly telling you, if you want a pure and nice engagement, involve us, all of these people. And let us sit down in the room and we discuss. What we discuss, you can keep it there. Then we don't need these ones. We don't need the mass media. We don't know. We don't need. We need to sit down and say, do we need security as Ugandans? The answer is yes. Okay. So me, if you ask me, is Adf Islamic? I will give you a simple answer. Answer is no. I don't. Then I can sit down. I have answered the question. But because of the engagement and the situation, we talk all of these things so that some people know. Some facts are not clear enough. And recently, I'm happy. I went to Rukunji to Bari, and I met there my old friend, our old from Strong also, Brigadier Kesugom. And when he gave me his card, he said he is in charge at the Center for Counterintelligence. And I want to go and sit with him. Because when I am seated with him, I have no fear at all. Because we shared the same room at campus, we ate the same food, with many things. So I will be free with him. Exactly. Later, he became even captain of Atlas in 1978. He was the captain of Atlas. So we need to sit down and discuss some of these things fairly. Many of our business, as senior officers, when we meet, we talk normally. But when behind doors, some people say, hey, can you talk to Imam Kasosi? Yes, sometimes when I come to platforms where I need to show that injustice is bad, I will be that hardliner to see. Because that is also an Islamic, by the way, attitude to strengthen yourself and to prepare, so that people begin to ask a lot of questions. The unfortunate thing, when we say some of these things, none of you contact us. I don't know whether you fear us or you are told not, or you don't want to know this information. It is free. I will not charge anybody. I will not ask you for fuel. I will not ask you for food. Even if it is cheap there, I will pay for myself. But I want to say peaceful Uganda, where I will be proud as a grandfather, because I'm a grandfather now. As a father, okay, free competition, free thinking. Sometimes when we come here, me, I'm a free thinker, but a very serious Muslim. As Surah has put it, sometimes I also appear maybe contradictory to people, but I mean it. So I want to thank Professor Simwe and your institution for calling us this. The last thing. Yes, the last thing was that leaders to give knowledge, they can give, but not everybody will accept. Then somebody was talking about all the Kampala Chibudi. That is not a big deal. Kayanja, where did Kayanja come from? Kayanja, during the 80s, the two pastors in Kampala was Kayanja and his elder brother, Bishop Makunzi. Today, all these, the Kaiwas, all of them are just offshoots of what? Of Kayanja. They are respected. But when a Muslim says for us we are this team, then we become a threat. Is that fair? That unfairness, that injustice, that intolerance is what makes some of us sometimes lose temper and you think we are bad. We are not. Because you come to my home, I don't have a fence around my house. I don't. Because I believe security, the provider of security is still protecting me. The moment he lifts it, I will either die or I will get some calamity. But as long as he's still protecting me, even if you do all your plans, you will not succeed. Because I know some people say, hey, the day we get you. Then I always tell them, then you are not about to get him. Because I don't say things for the sake of saying them, and I don't exaggerate. I consider what I'm going to say. So, as Muslims, sometimes we are offended by some of these statements, but as has put it, we accept them because that is what people are seeing. And then it becomes, people are saying, come and explain. We must explain to people who are prepared to be explained to. There are people who are not ready to listen. You have nothing to say. The security is there, preserve, as he has put it. Security is for everybody. One time, last day, I was arguing with my neighbor over building a fence on his house. And he did not want to leave the passage. He used all his land. I told him, by law, if we are sharing a road or a path, each of us is supposed to contribute half of his land. This man had utilized all of it. The Etiologies came there, then he said, he said he's doing such. I said, if you have no passage or way, that security is irrelevant. That's why even when you put the fence, you put a major gate, then you put some exit door, so that in case they are on that one, you can exit them. Otherwise, if you barricade everywhere, you'll be caught like a chicken, and then they can handle you. So it is very, very important for us that security should be in all aspects of our lives. Okay? Police officer, the way you people, the so-called big men, the way they are driving on the road, is that security? Is that really security? You are causing security to us. You are pointing fingers to whatever, all of us on the road. And I am very bitter with that one. But because I don't have energy, I just speak about it. But if I had energy, I would revoke the Islamic tradition that I would use force, but I don't have the force. But I still have the ability to talk. That's why I will tell you, I ask Kansine or Inspector General of Police, please let the driving on the road also be secure. It is really completely and secure. Because somebody has a bigger car, because somebody has police officers, whether on duty or not, army officers, everybody has the right of way. If I also create my right of way, what will happen? Chaos. Thank you very much.
Is that time when the movie is getting sweeter and it must end. Yes, thank you, Imam Kasozi. Thank you, Professor Mwevesa. Thank you, Professor Simwe. I just want to say that when I spoke of gender, I meant that we look at it as a security issue, just as we do driving on the road. And then the other issues of taking it out of the democratic procedures can be discussed. I want to just give us some takeaway points from this discussion. And what we have learned from the discussion is that there is global demonstration of fear of Islam and marginalization while we ignore the Christian terror-related activities. We also need to think of the historical question of Islam in Uganda and how it fits into the current security concern of terrorism. We need to appreciate issues such as creed, greed, and need, and how they feed into the violence that we see today. We should be mindful of the means that we use and define them as terrorism. The question of whether conventional war is similar to terrorism needs to be clearly brought out, and that language is very critical in understanding the issue of Islam. So are we talking about Islam versus Islamists, or are we talking about Islamic fundamentalists? We also need to separate our beliefs from what we see as contemporary practice. That there is a hidden and huge Western role in creating terror groups, from radicalization of Osama bin Laden to creation of the terror networks that we see today that have spread beyond Europe and the Middle East. That the deliberate creation of Islam as an enemy of the world peace is ongoing, and yet political propaganda and systematic creation of ADF as a threat. We need to redefine what our threats are. And then the approach, the issue of how sustainable the approach is that all measures need to be taken into consideration. But as we look into the military and intelligence, we also need to bear in mind how sitting governments have played a role in complicating the current security issues at hand. We need to consider issues of fairness and justice in dealing with those that we suspect to be involved in terror and terrorism. And then what next? We need to appreciate a constructive national dialogue, but also have intellectuals that are engaged in the debates, as we appreciate the multiple sources of knowledge, because no one commands it all. Again, I take the pleasure to thank you and inform you that Security Studies Analysis Center, in collaboration with the School of Social Sciences, Nkumba University, is open and is willing to open such security-related debates. And through, for instance, the academic programs that we offer, one of them being security studies. We can't thank you enough for staying online and also being physically present. And as we conclude it, those who are physically present, I request that you don't leave, not the water this time, because Imam Kasozi has refused to take the water. I appreciate that he's very security conscious, but I hope that he will also agree to take the other water that is in the next room. So please join us as we take that water. Thank you very much. And formally, we close it off, unless my boss, Professor Simwe, wants to. Okay, he says no. So thank you very much. And we have formally closed this. Thank you as well. I will ask Professor Simwe to read the team of the elites. Yes, so Imam, and the non-elite Professor Mwambusia. And I see he's already picking them. I think he knows them. And Ambassador Kisure and Afande Sari, please move with Professor Simwe for, is it? And then the others will follow in the order that will be given. Thank you very much.